The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
The views and opinions shared on this program are that of Louis T. and In the Lab Room alone and should be taken exactly as they are given. If you are soft, easily offended, or can't listen to the criticism of your team, this program is not intended for you. This is pure, unadulterated football talk for the hardcore fan. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned.
Back with the lab reports. You're in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Today we're talking Buffalo Bills here on the lab reports. And so here's a team that has made huge change in the offseason, and it was needed. When you continuously are touted as a team that can unseat the New England Patriots and every year you fall flat on your face, change is necessary. And so new head coach, new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, new GM. It's time for the Dougs to take over in Buffalo. I'm talking, of course, about Doug Whaley, your new GM, and Doug Marrone, your new head coach. And so let's talk about the strengths of this Buffalo Bills team as they go into 2013. Rush offense. Buffalo Bills were simply magnificent running the football last year. Now, look, a huge part of that is C.J. Spiller. Talking about Spiller, talking about Spiller, C.J. Spiller. And yes, that man was an absolute animal last year. But can he continue to do that? Because got to ask yourself a few questions. Bills let some guys walk away in free agency, not the same offensive line. Mainly the biggest part that they lost from a season ago is their left guard in Mr. Levitri. And so can they replace that production that they got out of Mr. Levitri at that left guard position? Hard to say right now, but the rush offense a season ago was the reason why this Bills team wasn't 2-14. Instead, having a 6-10 mark because they were able to run the football. They'll need to run the football again to take pressure off of their quarterback position, which we'll talk about a lot later on in this program. You look at this rush offense, and they did some damage, okay? 6th in the league in rushing, which proves that, hey, they got it done running the football. There were some heavy hitters running the football last year. I mean, the 49ers, the Redskins. We know about Adrian Peterson and what he was able to accomplish in Minnesota. There were some heavy hitters rushing the football last year, and the Buffalo Bills were right among them at the top of this league running the football, and so they did some damage. You look at tied for second in the NFL with plus 40-yard runs with 5. And we all know why that was accomplished. Again, C.J. Spiller was the main catalyst for that. But look, this Bills offense has to run the football to be successful. They did it in 2012. This is a strength that they want to carry over to 2013. Third lowest defensive penalty yardage total. Look, the Bills didn't do many things right on the defensive side of the football. But the one thing they can say we did right was, hey, we didn't commit a lot of penalties. We didn't beat ourselves defensively. Sure, you didn't beat yourselves. You allowed the other team to beat you defensively. They're hoping that they can continue to not beat themselves defensively, and maybe they can stop the other team from beating them as well on the defensive side of the football. But last year, the Bills did not shoot themselves in the foot. And so new defensive coordinator Mike Pettin loves the fact that they did not do that. He wants them to continue to not shoot themselves in the foot. Punt return prowess. Look, Leotis McKelvin was an absolute beast on special teams last year. I think in addition to him being able to play a little bit of cornerback, that was the reason the Bills brought him back on this football team. He was a free agent, and they said, hey, what he did for us on special teams. And look, you got to win special teams in this league. Especially when you're not that great of a football team. You need to scratch and claw and do everything in your power to win. And if you can play some good special teams like the Bills were able to do last season, hey, that helps your cause even more. So the Bills had the third most 20-yard returns in the punt game, as well as 2 TDs, which was second in the entire NFL. And so 7 plus 20 punt returns, and I talked about that in other videos, and I'm talking about it again. When you can get a 20-yard return on a punt, it changes the field position. It does something for you offensively. It gives you a huge shot in the arm. It gives you a spark, and it flips the field position. And so that's huge. But to take it the distance, that's even better. I mean, 2 touchdowns on punt returns, astronomically huge, because those are immediate points. And a lot of teams don't rely on their special teams for points. You just can't. It's so hard to take it the distance in this league, and the Bills were able to do so twice. That's huge. And you could look at one of those games that they were able to win against Miami on Thursday Night Football last season and say that game was a direct fact of them being able to run the football and them having good special teams. And so if you can do that, you have a chance in this league, and the Bills need to continue to be solid, or one of the better teams in the league. Not solid, because they weren't solid. They were great at punt return last season. So you look at weaknesses now, and when you don't win a lot of games and you're not a good football team, there are a lot of weaknesses. And so let's look at some of them. The first thing that jumped out at me for this team was the rush defense. And I don't understand. I couldn't fathom why the Bills weren't good at rush defense. I mean, you looked at all the moves they made last offseason and bringing in Mario Williams, and you already had Kyle Williams on this line, and you had Marcel Darius. And I looked at this defensive line, I said, man, they could be one of the best defensive lines. In fact, in my lab reports last season, that was one of the strengths going into the season. The defensive line, Mario Williams, Kyle Williams, Marcel Darius. I said, man, this is going to be a tough defensive line. Hard to stop these guys. Ryan Denny. I said, man, these guys are going to stop the run, if nothing else. And Mario is going to help you provide pass rush. And they had Mark Anderson last year, and he's going to get to the quarterback. Well, he's no longer on the team because he didn't get to the quarterback. He didn't help in the run game either. And they were just morbidly bad last season against the rush. And I could talk to you about it, but again, when it is so bad, sometimes visual is much better than me actually talking to you. Hey, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I'll allow the graphics to spell it out for you. I mean, what can you do? When you can't stop the run, you can't stop the run. The game that sticks out in my mind from last season was that Seattle Seahawks game in Canada. I mean, man, Russell Wilson had a field day. He had a festival on those guys. He did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And it just made it worse that they also have Marshawn Lynch, and he went beast mode, and they were absolutely trampled in that game on the ground, and the Bills simply could not stop the run in 2012. That's something they're going to have to clean up. You look at a negative 13 turnover differential. In this league, if you turn it over and you don't take care of the ball yourself, and you're not getting turnovers, you're not getting takeaways, you're going to have a negative turnover differential, and it's going to have a negative impact on your season. And the Bills had a negative turnover differential, and they're not good enough to overcome that. They didn't force the turnovers. They weren't good enough on the defensive side of the football. They didn't do enough to offset the fact that they were turning over the football and not receiving them back. And so, look, when you don't have the ability to overcome mistakes, you can't have mistakes like negative 13 in the turnover differential. They did. It really hindered their ability to win. And so you get what you get, and it was definitely a weakness, something that they need to improve on in 2013. You look at 27.2 points given up per game. Look, that's 26th in the league. You can't give up 27 points a game. How many games are you going to win giving up 27 points, okay? How many teams are you going to beat Buffalo? Let me ask you this question. How many teams are you going to beat giving up 27 points a game? Are you going to beat New England giving up 27? What about the Jets? Hey, if you give up 27 to the Jets, you stink, okay? What about the Dolphins? You think you're going to beat the Dolphins giving up 27 points? These guys didn't give up 20 points a game last season. You think you're going to give up 27 to the Dolphins, who don't give up points themselves, and win? You can't give up 27 points in this league. and think you're going to win many games. That number has to come down dramatically. And so that was definitely a weakness for this Buffalo Bills team. You look at number 2 receiver. I've been talking about this for years. Okay, they got Stevie Johnson, and if you want to classify him as a number 1, I don't have a problem with that. Who's your number 2 option? Who? And the Bills have been parading guys out here for years, and inadequate guys that aren't number 2 receivers, and it's time for this to stop. They drafted someone that I think can pick up that slack and be a number 2 option in Robert Woods. I'll talk about him when we get to the rookie watch, but number 2 receiver right now, until somebody steps up and assumes the role of number 2 receiver, that is definitely a weakness for the Buffalo Bills. You look at quarterback, and man, oh man, look, I like, Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's not a starting quarterback in this league. He's a backup, and he turned the football over too much. And when you turn it over, you don't give your team a chance. And so they need a quarterback. And I'm here to tell you that Kevin Corn on the cob is not the answer. E.J. Manuel, initially, I didn't think he was the answer either. But he's won me over in his preseason. Not totally won me over, but I wasn't a proponent. I wasn't a big E.J. Manuel fan. And he showed me some things in the preseason. But of course, it's the preseason. You got to take it with a grain of salt. And so I want to see more. And this injury to E.J. Manuel has me a little worried because he was playing such good football. He was going to win that battle, and we'll talk about that in a second. But he got injured, and now you're relying on Kevin Corn on the cob, who can't stay healthy, who isn't that good of a quarterback himself. And he got injured in the 3rd preseason game. Looks like he may be suffering from another concussion, and if he is, he's going to miss some time because that's not his first concussion. And so Bills are really struggling right now at the quarterback position. You might see Jeff Toole at some point this season, and I don't know if you want to see that or not. Some Bills fans are really enamored with this guy, and that's great. But if Jeff Toole is in the game, something is wrong in Buffalo. So we move on from weaknesses to camp battles, and when you're not a good football team, there are going to be some spots available for guys to crack this starting lineup. And so you look at quarterback, and that's the biggest battle you have. I mean, any team in the league will tell you, if your quarterback situation isn't settled, you have a problem on your football team. And so in Buffalo, it's E.J. Manuel, the rookie, out of Florida State, battling against veteran Kevin Corn on the cob. And look, if you're a Bills fan, you want E.J. Manuel starting from day one. You do not want Kevin Corn on the cob starting for you. Simple as that. And E.J. Manuel had essentially locked this thing up before he got injured. His first 2 preseason games, phenomenal. He was highly efficient versus the Indianapolis Colts. I thought he took it a step further and was really good versus the Minnesota Vikings. Then he got hurt. Needed some surgery to clean up something in his knee. He's going to miss the rest of the preseason. I don't know if he'll be ready for the season opener. But I do know this, that surgery has stunted his growth. And so now I think the Bills are going to be hurt by E.J. Manuel not being able to finish wrapping up this quarterback competition. And I honestly don't know. You could actually throw Jeff Toole in this thing now because with the injury to Manuel and to Cobb now, Toole might have to play. So who knows what's going on at quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. And that has me worried, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Final wide receiver spots. And to me, if you're a Bills fan, you've got 4 receivers on this roster. It's a definite. And those 4 receivers are Stevie Johnson, of course, Robert Woods, T.J. Graham, Marquise Goodwin. After those 4, it's anybody's bet as to who will be on this roster. Anybody's guess. You don't know who will be those final 2 or 1 receivers that will be on this roster, but you got Marcus Easley, Chris Hogan, Brad Smith, Derek Rogers, and Brandon Kaufman. Look, Brad Smith, I think, is going to make this roster because of the pay cut that he took in the offseason. I think if he was still making the amount of money that he was slated to make coming into the season, then I don't think he would have been a guy that would have been around. They could have cut him and saved themselves some money. But by him agreeing to that pay cut, I think he's going to be on this roster now. I think he's valuable enough and can do enough to help this team and stay on this roster. So I think he's going to get a roster spot. I've looked at Chris Hogan this preseason. I said, man, he's performed really well. Hard for me to not see this guy making the roster, but you look at Derek Rogers and the talent that's there, and I don't know about this guy. He's supposed to be better than what you've seen thus far, but the talent is there. Someone else is going to give him the opportunity. You can't sneak Derek Rogers onto the practice squad. I think someone else will see the potential, see the talent, snatch this guy up. So if you're the Bills, do you hold on to this guy and say, all right, we're going to give you another season to figure it out? Or do you say, hey, we don't have time to wait. This is a roster spot that could go to someone else, and you move on. Who knows? But there's definitely competition for the back half of that wide receiving corpse. And so we'll see who's able to wrap up the final spot or the final two spots at the receiver position for the Buffalo Bills. You look at left guard. Colin Brown versus Doug Legursky. To me, Colin Brown right now is in the driver's seat. Anything short of a accident or an injury, and Colin Brown is going to be your starter. He's won this competition right out. I think Doug Legursky isn't a guy that you necessarily want to start if you don't have to. The Bills don't have to because they have Colin Brown. And I thought he's been good enough. He's not Levitri, but he's been good enough. And so, look, I think Colin Brown has done an adequate job at left guard, and I think he needs to be your starting left guard, and I think he will be your starting left guard. You look at kicker, and there was a competition here between Ryan Lindell, your longtime kicker who you just gave a contract extension to not too long ago, and the rookie Dustin Hopkins out of Florida State. But the Bills, much like this new wave of young kickers in the league, these strong-legged young kickers that can kick it from 55, the Bills said, hey, we want that. We want to be able to kick a 55-yard field goal. We want to get a first down past midfield and be in field goal range. And so they looked at Ryan Lindell, the consummate professional, the guy that you could count on and have counted on for many years, and said, hey, you're getting up there in age. The leg just isn't as strong as it used to be. We got a young, upcoming kicker here that we feel like has a big NFL-ready leg. I hate to do this to you, Ryan, but you got to go. And so Ryan Lindell was given his walking papers, shown the door. He's no longer a Buffalo Bill. And so by default, Dustin Hopkins has put a stranglehold on this kicker position. He's going to be your kicker in 2013. And if you're a Bills fan, you're hoping well into the future. So those are your camp battles in Buffalo. We go from camp battles to rookie watch. And you look at this rookie pool for the Buffalo Bills and what they were able to do in this draft. You see the imprint of this new GM, Doug Whaley, and new head coach, Doug Marrone, and what they're trying to do. And the first thing that they wanted to get accomplished, get a quarterback. And you can't win in this league if you don't have your signal caller in place. And so, first round pick, they trade back and select E.J. Manuel, quarterback out of Florida State. Wasn't a huge proponent of this move, of this draft pick, but after watching him in the preseason, I must say, I was thoroughly impressed, and I'm anxious to see what E.J. Manuel will look like after he comes back from the knee surgery. But he was playing good football up until he got injured. Now, those question marks that I had before have resurfaced, and now I'm not sure about E.J. Manuel all over again. But I will say this, if he continues on the path and picks up where he left off at before the injury, I think this guy could be a find for you at the quarterback position. Second round picks. Buffalo Bills had two of them. Wide receiver Robert Woods out of USC. This is the guy that I think can come in and man up that number 2 wide receiver position. Highly productive receiver in college. He can run routes. Every single route in the route tree, Robert Woods can run it. He can run it effectively. He can catch the ball away from his frame. He can make plays in the passing game. I think this is the guy that will be your number 2 receiver in Buffalo across from Stevie Johnson. You also look at a second-round selection, linebacker Kiko Alonso out of Oregon. He's going to start immediately for you at the linebacker position. And I think this is a guy that is a difference maker. I like him in pass coverage. I like his toughness. I like his ability to get nosy in the run game as well. And so Kiko Alonso is a physical presence on this defense that will help you immediately. And I like this addition to this football team. You look at the Bills' third-round selection, Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver out of Texas. And this guy has burst onto the scene on special teams. And he can go. He can flat out go world-class speed we're talking about here. And if he hits a seam, and he's already shown us this in the preseason, he hits a seam, forget about it. You can stop running. You can stop chasing him. You're not gonna get him, okay? And so he's going to electrify this Bills special teams unit. He's going to give them a boost from the kick return standpoint. And also, I think he's a guy that you want to get it to offensively. Throw him bubble screens. Throw him drags, slants, speed outs. Get him the football quickly and allow him to work out in space where this guy is extremely dangerous. You look at fourth-round selection. Safety Duke Williams out of Nevada. He's a guy that is going to be on this roster. He's going to help this Bills team. He will not start, and he will not see the field that often, but he'll help on special teams. He'll learn from some solid safeties, and he might be a guy that they may find some packages to sneak him on the field with, but in terms of him having an immediate impact defensively, it won't happen. Bills have young safeties. Jarius Byrd just signed his franchise tender, so he'll be on this roster. Aaron Williams, a young guy that they converted from cornerback to safety out of Texas, someone that they like at the safety position as well. And so Duke Williams will be someone that will be watching and learning, and maybe they'll have a package for him down the road that will allow him to get on the field. But right now, he will not contribute that often on the defensive side of the football. He'll be a guy that helps you in a special teams capacity. You look at fifth-round selection, defensive back Jonathan Meeks out of Clemson. He's another guy that the Bills will work with. I think he'll make this roster as well. If he doesn't, he'll definitely be on the practice squad, but I see Jonathan Meeks making this roster as a young cornerback that the Bills will continue to work with, and he'll see the field. As we know, this is a passing league, and with the New England Patriots being in your division, you're definitely going to see 3 and 4 and even 5 wide receiver sets. So you're going to need cornerback depth, and I think Jonathan Meeks is a guy that can provide that for you. He can play safety, he can play corner, and so I think that flexibility in itself will help Jonathan Meeks earn a roster spot on this football team. You look at sixth-round selection, kicker Dustin Hopkins. We've talked about him out of Florida State. He won the kicker job away. He was able to wrestle it away from Ryan Lindell, and so he'll be the kicker for the Bills, and they're hoping he'll be the kicker for the Buffalo Bills for a very long time. Seventh-round pick, Chris Gregg, tight end out of Arkansas. I don't see him making the roster, but then again, I'm not sure about this Bills tight end position. Scott Chandler still not back from injury, so I don't know. Chris Gregg could find his way onto this roster by default. I don't think the Bills are that healthy at the tight end position, and so maybe tight end Chris Gregg in the 7th round out of Arkansas could be a guy that makes this roster. We'll see. But those are your rookies to watch in Buffalo. We go from there to the best part of the lab reports. Of course, I'm talking about the experiment. So this experiment is called the longest hangover ever. Gosh, the Bills have the longest streak of not making the playoffs. And we all remember the Music City Miracle in '99 and how it has adversely affected this Buffalo Bills team. They haven't been in the playoffs since. And what happened to the days of the resilient Buffalo Bills? The team that would make it to the Super Bowl only to be smacked around in the Super Bowl, get up off the turf, dust themselves off, and come back and get back to the Super Bowl the very next year. What happened to that resilient Buffalo Bills organization? They get one little Music City Miracle, and all of a sudden, they can't find their way. Even with GPS navigation, they can't even find their way back to the postseason. And so, for me, it's the longest hangover ever. And new head coach Doug Marrone and new GM Doug Whaley are looking to end this nightmare of a hangover for the Buffalo Bills as they try to find a way to get this team, this organization, this fan base back to the postseason. So, research question. Can new head coach Doug Marrone and new GM Doug Whaley revitalize this once proud Buffalo Bills franchise and have them do something they haven't done in well over a decade? Make it to the playoffs. Playoffs? Playoffs? They just want to win another game. So, look, the Bills need to find a way to put the pieces in place. I don't think the Bills are a playoff team in 2013, but they need to start putting the pieces in place. I like this defense. I think they have a lot of young parts. Now they need to assemble the rest of this offense together. Find your quarterback. Find out who that number 2 receiver is. Find some of these pieces that are going to help you. Assemble them, get them all in the same place, get them all on the same page, and start working towards that goal of making it back to the postseason. I don't want to hear about Super Bowl talk in Buffalo. Make it to the postseason first, and then you can start talking reckless about winning the Super Bowl. Your first objective is to get to the postseason. Hey, how about trying to win the AFC East for a change and stopping the Dolphins or the Jets or the Patriots from winning that division? How about you do that? So, hypothesis. If Doug Marrone can hit a home run with his quarterback selection, E.J. Manuel, and C.J. Spiller is, well, C.J. Spiller, and his defense is light years better under Mike Patton, then maybe, just maybe, the Buffalo Bills could be the surprise in the NFL in 2013. Just like those old Burger King commercials. Hey, it could happen. Maybe. Who knows? I don't see it happening. But hey, who am I to rain on anyone's parade? Okay? So if E.J. Manuel is like out of this world in his rookie season, if C.J. Spiller is C.J. Spiller and this defense is light years ahead of where they were a season ago, and Christian Ponder paid them the ultimate compliment in the preseason. He said, man, the Bills were throwing exotic defenses at me that I haven't seen, and they confused me and they made me struggle. That's Mike Patton in a nutshell. This guy gets it as a defensive coordinator. Wouldn't be surprised if teams were coming at him to offer him a head coaching gig here shortly, because this guy gets it defensively. And so be looking for big things from him. And if they can do some things defensively and special teams chips in, who knows? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Materials needed. Winning manual. And look, the Bills need instructions on how to make it to the playoffs. They don't know how to make it there on their own. They need a guide. Maybe, just maybe, E.J. Manuel is exactly the winning manual for the Bills. They need instructions. They need a how-to on how to make it to the postseason. When you haven't been in 14 seasons and you have the longest drought in the National Football League of not making it to the postseason, you don't know how to find your way back. You didn't leave a trail of breadcrumbs leading you back to the postseason. If you did, then the big bad wolf called the New England Patriots must have gobbled them all up. And you don't know how to find your way back. So maybe the winning manual to get to the postseason is E.J. Manuel. At least you hope he is the winning manual. Thriller, Spiller. And look, if the Bills are going to do anything in 2013, it starts with C.J. Spiller, and he needs to be a thriller for the Bills to do anything. And so if C.J. continues to be a thriller, then the Bills will be just fine rushing the football, and they'll have a shot. I can't guarantee you anything. This guy was dynamic last year, and you only won 6 games. So I can't guarantee you anything. But I can say that your chances will be increased greatly if C.J. Spiller is doing his thing. Fred X, you still deliver? And that's my question for Fred Jackson. I remember when he got the contract and he was Fred X, special delivery. You know what? special delivery. Well, I don't know about Fred X anymore. Does he still deliver? I'm not sure. But it'd be nice if he could compliment CJ Spiller and take some of the pressure off him. Because you don't want CJ Spiller getting the football 35 times a game. You don't want him having 21 carries and touching it another 7 times in the screen game or in the passing game. Fred Jackson needs to take some of that pressure off of him. So I'll ask one more time. Fred X, you still deliver? We'll see. Patton Power. Patton Power. If you're the Bills, you need Mike Patton to come in and infuse this defense with some Patton Power. Come in, coach it up, scheme it up, put guys in a position to make plays, and give this defense the ability to excel. I think he's going to do that. I think the world of Mike Patton. The Jets did too. That's why they offered him a contract extension. He wanted no parts of that extension. He moved on to Buffalo, and I think he's on the fast track to becoming a head coach in this league. And if you're the Bills, you got to take advantage of this guy while you got him. And I think he's going to make an excellent head coach. But first, he needs to continue to build up his brand as a defensive coordinator. And you've got all the pieces he needs to do what it is he wants to do. Now he's just got to go out and put guys in positions to succeed. And they got to go out and execute. And if they can do that, this defense will be fueled by Patton Power. So it's all Goodwin. It's all Goodwin is the next material needed. And look, if this young fella can come and do what he did against the Colts and extrapolate that over a 16-game slate, you will be absolutely fine on special teams. Of course, I'm talking about Marquise Goodwin. And it's all Goodwin, man. And if he can continue to do that, sprinkle in a little bit of receiving help, and look, if you can throw him a hitch, a wide receiver screen, a slant, a drag, speed out. If you can find ways to get this guy the ball in space, he could be a problem for some teams. Him and TJ Graham, you got 2 burners right here. And if you can find ways to run crossers with these guys and make the defense have to pick which one are they going to run with, one of these guys is going to come free on a crosser. Give them the football, allow them to work in space. Set up wide receiver screens with these guys. Reverses, double reverses, end arounds, you name it. Find ways to get TJ Graham and Goodwin the football. It's all Goodwin if you're the Buffalo Bills. Find this guy a way to get the football. Second receiver is, I think I know, but I'm not sure. How about someone emerge and show me that you are the number 2 receiver in Buffalo? So until then, the second receiver is question mark. Show me that you are the number 2 receiver, Robert Woods. I think you're the guy, but I'm not sure yet. So you move on. Last material that is needed. Marone's throne. Look, Doug Marrone has to come in and instill confidence in this Bills team, first and foremost. But second of all, he has to show that he can handle this 53-man roster. And he can be an offensive coach, that he can be a defensive coach, that he can be a special teams coach. He needs to be a head coach, not an offensive coach, but a head coach. He needs to oversee the whole body of work that is the Buffalo Bills. Not just focusing in on the offense or the quarterback play. Focus in on this whole team. Show that you can manage a 53-man roster. Show that you are the guy that can lead the Buffalo Bills back to the postseason and to the promised land. Doug Marrone, it's your throne. What are you going to do with it? So, you go from there to data for the Buffalo Bills. This is what I think the Bills need to accomplish in 2013 to have any shot of doing anything, of making any kind of moves in the AFC East. Bills quarterbacks. I can't specifically say one quarterback because I think multiple quarterbacks are going to play for the Bills this year. EJ Manuel is banged up right now, so is Kevin Korn on the Cobb. You might even see Jeff Toole at some point in this season. It's crazy right now in Buffalo at the quarterback position. And so 3,300 passing yards, for 19 to 22 touchdowns, 13 to 15 INTs, and a 58% completion percentage. Those aren't eye-popping numbers, but I don't expect an eye-popping performance from this Buffalo Bills quarterback position in 2013. Stevie Johnson, 75 to 83 catches, 1,100 receiving yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns. He's got to be the man in Buffalo. You look at Robert Woods. I think he has to emerge as that second receiver. 53 to 60 catches, 640 to 720 receiving yards, 4 to 6 TDs. He's got to step up and help this offense out and take some of the pressure off of Stevie Johnson. CJ Spiller, 250 to 285 carries for 1,180 to 1,285 rushing yards, 470 to 550 receiving yards, 16 total touchdowns. They need CJ Spiller to be a thriller in 2013. Fred Jackson has to take some of that pressure off of CJ Spiller. 125 to 150 carries, 650 to 725 rushing yards, 7 total TDs. Look, the best friend of a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, is the running game. And the Bills are going to need the running game to really benefit this offense and really make it a lot easier on whichever one of these young Bill quarterbacks are in the game, because I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Toole is in at some point, but I'm thinking E.J. Manuel will be back early on to man up this quarterback position. And so either way, it doesn't matter. Even if Kevin Corn on the Cobb is in the game, you still need to run the football effectively because you don't trust him either. And so Bills need to be able to run the football. They're going to need C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson to step up. Bills D forced 28 to 31 turnovers, 36 to 41 sacks, 22.5 points per game given up, and 9 plays of 40 yards or more given up. Look, Bills need to bring that 27.2 points per game given up number down to around 22 points. If they can do that, they'll have a chance to win some games. I can see the Bills scoring 23, 24 points. Cannot see the Bills scoring 28 points every game to win. And so they can bring that number down. They got a shot. And they got to force turnovers. They got to force turnovers, and they got to get to the quarterback. We'll see if they're able to do that. Bills special teams. 2 punt return TDs, 2 kickoff return TDs, and 7 to 9 20-yard returns, and 3 to 5 40-yard returns. This Bills special teams unit has the ability and the potential to be explosive. One of the best in the league, with Leotis McKelvin on punt returns and Marquise Goodwin on kickoff returns. This Bills team could really put a lot of pressure on opposing special teams units. And so if they can help out the offense by shortening the field, by getting good returns, by putting up points themselves in the special teams game, the Bills will have a shot to win some football games. Some that maybe they wouldn't even have had unless this special teams stepped up. So if they can get something out of this special teams unit, the Bills could be extremely dangerous in 2013. So you go from there to independent variable. And it's simply the new guys and the youngins. Look, you got a lot of young guys on this roster, a lot of second and third year prospects that you need to step up. Stephon Gilmore, Aaron Williams. You look at Kiko Alonso on the defensive side of football, Marcel Darius. A lot of young guys that you're looking to step in and help you. Alex Carrington is going to start at the defensive end position for you. A lot of young, talented guys that need to step up. You know, Nigel Bradham and all those guys on that linebacking corps. You need these young guys to step up for you. And so it's a lot of youngins on this team. On the offensive side as well, we talked about Robert Woods needing to separate himself and become that number 2 option. Marquise Goodwin, TJ Graham. Here are a lot of guys that are young, that are hungry. Cordy Glenn needs to step up at left tackle. There are a lot of young guys on this roster. E.J. Manuel at the quarterback position. You need the new guys and the youngins to step up. That's the independent variable. You don't know what you're getting from the new guys or the youngins. And so if you can get production out of these guys and they can kind of shorten that learning curve, you got a shot in Buffalo, but it's going to be hard when you're relying on so many young players. And that's what you got to do when you're trying to build this thing up from the floor up. You got to rely on young guys. You got to bring in an infusion of young, talented football players that you hope can grow together over the next 3 seasons or so to help you win. And I don't expect the Bills to win this year. I don't expect the Bills to be a chief competitor in the AFC East this season. But if you can continue to build on something, if you can find out if EJ Manuel is the guy or not, if you can start to get these guys to buy into what you're selling, if you're Doug Marrone and GM Doug Whaley, you could have something here in the next 2 or 3 seasons that's very, very tangible and something that is very real in Buffalo, something that you haven't had in a long time. So the new guys and the youngins, independent variable. You look at the dependent variable. It's simple. It's the running game, because I just spoke about the quarterback's best friend being the running game, and especially when your quarterback is a rookie like EJ Manuel or Jeff Toole or a guy that is inconsistent like Kevin Corn on the Cobb, you need the running game to step to the forefront and really take pressure off of those quarterbacks and have them feeling like, hey, I don't have to do as much to win. I just need to take care of the football, manage the game, and take the game as it comes to me. I don't need to go out and force the issue because my running game is right here by my side, taking care of business, and all I have to do is supplement the running game. And so the dependent variable for the Bills is the running game. If they can run the football, they'll have a shot. And running the football will allow them to minimize the opportunities to make mistakes, and it will shorten the football game, which in turn will give the Buffalo Bills an opportunity to win football games. You look at the constant. The Bills don't make the playoffs. That's the constant. 14 years of not making the postseason means that you're inept, you aren't a good franchise, and you simply don't get it. And the Bills, for the last 13 years, haven't gotten it, haven't been in the postseason, have the longest drought. And so the constant here is that the Bills don't make the postseason. Yikes. And so we find ourselves at the conclusion. And no, you're not making the postseason yet again. So the streak continues. It's alive and kicking. And I don't like this Bills team in 2013, and I'll tell you why. I had a lot more confidence in this team when EJ Manuel was playing good football and you were seeing flashes of what Doug Marrone and Doug Whaley saw when they drafted this guy and made him the first quarterback selected in the 2013 NFL draft. I said, man, maybe the Bills can be a lot better than I am giving them credit for. Then he goes down. He's got the knee scope. It's not a significant injury, but it's just slowing down the process. It's definitely bringing it to a screeching halt. He should be out getting more reps and gaining more confidence and continuing to build the continuity between he and the receiving corps. Instead, he's on the sidelines nursing a knee surgery procedure. And so the next man is up, and that's Kevin Kolb. And I already don't trust him to begin with. Now he has potentially another concussion that he suffered in the 3rd preseason game versus the Washington Redskins. And so he might not be able to go for a while. So then the next guy up is Jeff Toole, another rookie that you had no plans of playing in 2013, and he might actually have to play in this season. Let's face it, he's a guy that you might have to rely on. And so I don't like this Bills situation at the quarterback position. And to make matters worse, the Bills have an extremely tough schedule. They play the Steelers. They play the Ravens. They play the Bengals. They play the Patriots twice. I mean, ouch. I mean, what are you supposed to do with that kind of slate? And so it hurts me to say this because I don't like damning teams to this, but you're 3-13. You are a 3-13 team. You are staring 3-13 in the face. Can you win an extra game or two? Sure. You could end up 5-11 or 4-12. But for me, I don't see the Bills winning a game. And they could sneak somebody early on in the season and get one where I didn't have them getting one. I don't see you winning a game until about week 7 or 8. Until you have the Jets at home. I just don't. You're going to have to sneak somebody in the division. You're going to have to sneak the Dolphins, or maybe you can sneak the Patriots. You always play them tough, but I don't know. If you don't get the Patriots in week 1, you could be in some serious trouble this year. If you get the Patriots in week 1, your season could be totally different. But I just don't see you beating the Patriots. I just don't. And so 3-13 is what I have the Bills going in 2013. Another year of missing the postseason. And look, take the time to use 2013 as a building block for the future. If guys perform in 2013, you could be a team competing for a playoff spot in 2014. And that's going to do it for the Buffalo Bills here on the Lab Reports. Join me next time when we'll be talking about the Miami Dolphins on the Lab Reports. See you then.